Hey guys, Matthew here. So as promised, this is going to be the second to last video of the top X ways to make currency in the first week-ish of a league. Today we'll be talking about mapping. So this is going to include literally like everything I could think of when it comes to mapping and how to juice up your maps as most as possible. Basically how much you should invest for what kind of maps you're running and what tier of maps you're running and stuff. So basically literally everything I could think of. I'm sure I probably forgot things or little secrets that you guys may know about. So be sure to let the other people know in the comment section, and I'll basically have a pinned comment and I'll edit it with whatever relevant information you guys have and give you the credit for it, because obviously I'm only a single human being, so I forget things and I might just not even know certain things. For the most part though, this is going to be the list of things that I personally use and know when it comes to maximizing the amount of currency you can make when mapping. And also, another little thing is basically I'm not going to go over every little thing because, as you can see, it's a pretty lengthy, text document that I have over here. So I'll basically go over the main stuff and let you guys just pause the video and read up certain other things, and take the notes that you need or whatever. Because if I go over every little thing, we'll be here for a long ass time, and I'm gonna try for once actually make it rather quick video. So first off, let's start with Chaos Recipe. I think Chaos Recipe is really good as a group. When exalts are below the 60C mark, all the way up to like the 80C mark. This is actually like insane in group play if you're very well coordinated as your group. So basically how you do that is that every member would be assigned a couple of items, and they would all trade to one member sitting in his hideout. You want to have custom filters for those for each members. Well, for each roles of who's going to be picking up what and stuff. So for example, you have member 1 and 2 picking up boots, gloves, helmets, and then rings, amulets, and belts. And member 3 and 4 picking up 3-slot weapons such as daggers, chest pieces, rings, amulets, and belts. While member of the team number 5 sits in his hideout doing basically the actual Chaos Recipe. So member 1 and 3, so this guy and that guy would be mapping together, and member 2 and 4 would be mapping together in other maps. The reason for that is because, yes, adding more people to the same map does give a quantity bonus. But even if it's, let's say, 50% per member, running a completely other map is going to be 100% quantity. So in the end, you're still going to be getting more loot if you split your party apart, so long as they're not slowed down or slower because you decide to split them apart. So for example, what could be good here is like a carry with an ore bot, number 1 and 3, and like a carry with, I don't know, like a curse bot, or like just a, I don't know, like a tank or whatever it is. It doesn't even matter what these people are, so long as they're keeping up with each other and relatively the same speed when it comes to moving around the map. So member 5, as I said, sitting in the hideout. So you'd be looking at about a 3-minute map clear if you're playing meta builds that are good and you're actually hauling ass. You can clear maps in 3 minutes very, very easily. Typically MF farmers will clear maps in like 2 minutes, so 3 minutes is not at all like hard or anything. It's pretty average, I'd say, if you're trying to go fast and picking up items. And this is counting the trading part, where basically every time one of these members, 1, 2, 3, or 4, has a full inventory of whatever they're supposed to be picking up, they go to the trader's hideout or the banker's hideout and they give him the entire inventory worth of these items. So for example, if member 1 has an inventory full, 60 slots full of boots, gloves, helmets, and rings, amulets, and belts, he goes to that hideout, gives everything to the trader, and the trader takes care of it from there. So yeah, you'd be looking at about 3 minutes per map, counting that. So in every map, from my personal testing, obviously, I found that you can do about 2 Chaos Recipe per average per map. And you will at some point probably run out of amulets, so you're not necessarily going to get 2 rare amulets every map, but I'll go over it in a sec how you can fix that issue. So Chaos Recipe set per map, about 2. So since you have 2 group starting maps, that'd be 4 sets of Chaos Recipe per 3 minutes or so. So 4 sets of 2C, because you're doing unidentified, you'd get 8 chaos per 3 minutes, which amounts to about 160 chaos per hour. And that can actually be quite a bit more if you're super efficient. Since 2 sets of rares is not at all a lot. Like the amount of chess pieces you'll drop in a map, even all can go in, like, let's say a T3 map, you'll probably get like 7 of them, right? So you can fill up an entire inventory literally almost every map, no matter who you are in this. The thing is, you're gonna get bottlenecked by jewelry, and especially amulets, but you can fix that by simply using essences that are worth like an alchemy or even less, like a chance orb, whatever it is, like essences that are dirt cheap because people get them along the way as they're leveling, and then they just throw them up for sale, and you can just offer people like 1 alch for their crappy essences, and they'll probably take it, like for real. And you can just throw those on white piece of jewelry of the right item level, and you'll be making literally twice as much as I mentioned before by simply doing that, so long as you don't run out of essences. So the way you do that is whenever, say, one of these groups finds a jewelry box, a jewelry strong box, they would alch it, open it up, and then chances are they'll get a few rare items from it, but probably like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 rare jewelry pieces, be it rings, belts, or amulets. And I didn't mean rare, I meant whites. So just normal, and then you, the trader, can just go up and buy these essences that are super cheap. And at that point, if you're paying 1 alchemy for these essences, you could just yourself throw an alchemy on the items, on these white items, to make sure that you never get bottlenecked by jewelry. So if you can be that efficient, you can be looking at 320 chaos per hour, divided by, let's say, the number we said, which would be a maximum of 60 C per X. You'd be looking at 5.3 exalts per hour. And by the way, these are realistic figures if your group is well coordinated and chaining maps without any downtime. But while this is realistic, don't expect to be making twice that amount. Like, you're reaching the point where it's kind of like the limit for chaos recipe, at least in this kind of group. If you're doing it with, let's say, 2 full parties of like 5 members and stuff, you can expect to make twice as much. If you're doing it with like 1 party of, let's say, 3 members with a banker and 2 map runners, you can expect to make maybe a little bit less. Probably not 50% less, because obviously the bottleneck is still going to happen no matter if you're a party of 3 or 5. So long as you're buying the essences or alching them yourself, depending how expensive alchs are. Like, if alchemies are 6 for a chaos, which they typically are very, very early in the league, before most of the people get to mapping, and then the supply goes way down and the demand goes way higher, especially in a league like, for example, Legion, with, what's it called? With glacier farming. The demand for alchemies and the supply was so high, yet the supply was so low that alchemies were like 2 for a chaos. But early in the league, they're like 6 for a chaos. You don't have to worry about that. You can just alch your own items, if anything, like your own white bases. You can also buy jewelry in bulk from other players. Some groups out there will just be picking up almost nothing, mostly the leveling pushing group. So they'll be picking up like rare amulets and rings and belts and stuff, but they won't actually even do the chaos recipe or identify them or anything, or maybe they'll identify them, but then they'll sell them to you in bulk. So you can buy literally 50 at a time, if anything, for about an alchemy each for the most part, because these groups, they need alchemies to keep rolling their maps. So they'll sell you shit for like an alchemy each when it comes to jewelry in bulk, which is crazy. Then, if you're buying, let's say, 2 rings and an amulet for 3 alchemies, that's 0.5 C if it's 6 alchemies for a chaos. While from your chaos recipe, you'll make 1.5 C, 2 C, so 1.5 C profit, which is huge because the supply of these people selling in bulk is way higher than the supply of actually, jewelry dropping from your own maps. So, final words. Is chaos recipe worth it? Yes, it's amazing, but only if you're really good at it, if your group is efficient at it, and if you have a set plan, custom loot filters for it, and everything like that. If you're not efficient, or you're playing solo, then don't even think about it. But Chaos Recipe when playing solo is actually somewhat decent early to get like the first few mandatory uniques for your build. So for example, to afford your tabula, I do Chaos Recipe like every league, stuff like that, to get your first like 50 to 100 chaos, just because you're getting the items along the way anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. There's also the Exile recipe, but it's typically not worth it at all unless you're a trader and you're buying basically very, very cheap bases of shaped or elder items, and you're buying them for dirt cheap. Then you can do it. I would recommend doing the unidentified, but when you're buying these bases, chances are they will be identified, so it becomes even harder. But you can sell basically a full set, just like the Chaos Recipe, of items, rare items. But if they're shaped or elder, you'll get 1/10 of an Exalt, which is 2 Exalt shard. And if they're unidentified, you get 1/5, which is 4 Exalt shards. Alright, then let's go over this. How can you run your maps? And basically at which point I would invest how much. So you can all can go. You can Val, because Vals are less than a Chaos early in the league. You can Chisels. 4 Chisels is basically 2C typically. It's like 2 Chisels for a Chaos. But certain leagues, for example in Legion, since nobody was using them, Chisels reached early. They reached a point when they were literally 5 for a Chaos. So you're cutting that price by half. Sacrifice Fragments, the 3 that are not Midnight, you can buy in bulk for 3C per set. Sextant can cost a lot, unfortunately, simply because, you know, you don't know how lucky you will be when rolling them. You can roll the same crappy sextant like 10 times in a row, but for the most part, sextants are always going to be profitable in the long run. Same thing for Zanamods though, but for Zanamods they can get pretty expensive, especially early when Chaos are super valuable. So I'd say, you know, stay away from them unless, you know, you're doing beyond because you're trying to get level 100 as fast as possible, so like a leveling push. But I'm sure most people watching this video are not there, otherwise they wouldn't be watching this video. Abyss can actually be very profitable depending on the price of the bases. So if an item level 83 Abyss Jewel is worth like 10C, and you can get the Abyss mod on your map for 2C, it's pretty easy to do the math to see that, dude, you're making money right here. Prentice can be okay depending on the price and obviously on the supply and the demand of the coins. Prophecies, using Prophecies is good, but they're annoying to buy unless you get yourself somebody who can sell them in bulk. Scarabs are super expensive, and another Xanamod that I didn't write here because we didn't have access to it is Nemesis, and that's obviously going to be always going to be good to, you know, chance scour headhunters from leather belts. So, when it comes to low tier maps, I just all can go. So, for example, in Legion we had Glacier. Specific div card farming would kind of be the same, all can go. So, for example, Burial Chamber. But I could use Chisels and fragment of Sacrifice Fragments if they were super cheap. Not at that price. Not at 2C and 3C, but if I could get those, for example, like I said, 1C, let's say I can get those for 3 pieces for 2C. Then it comes 3C additional per map, and a map like Burial Chambers, for example, would sell for like 2C each early. So chances are, by just having these two things in your map, you'll be getting more returns, which you can sell to pay for these alone. But on a 5C per, it'd be very questionable. When it comes to red maps, to sustain, you can pretty much all Chisel and Val. When it comes to like T11s and T12s, as you get higher up, so T13, T14, T15, you might not be able to, you know, sustain with just Alch, Chisel, and Val. When it comes to sustaining T16s or like Elder maps, you can Alch, Chisel, Val, use Stack Frags and Prophecies, and for the most part you'll sustain. But if it's an Elder map that's like a white map at first, so you have a bunch of white maps surrounding it, using Sextants on it is always a good idea as well, because white Sextants aren't all that expensive early, just because not that many people are using them. Because they rather have the currency for their builds and stuff. I would only use red sextants in groups or with leechers, probably not solo. 3 to 4 whites is typically good enough even to sustain T16 maps over a long period of time. When it comes to short term, you might go on a dry spell and sextant and do all these things and run out of your map, whatever it is. Just because you got unlucky, but over a long period of the time, 3-4 whites with everything else is typically more than enough to over sustain by a good margin. You can also reroll your maps to 90% quantity if you're running super juiced up maps. and you have a lot of base currency to work with, because that'll give you a ton of map returns and also XP. You can use Scarabs, but those are really expensive. I'd say that over time, they're probably somewhat good to use, depending on which one, and depending on what time in the league. But early, like, I'm not sure. I'm pretty iffy about using the Scarabs, like, very, very early, like in the first week. Unless there's, like, an exploit kind of thing, like it happened this league with the Tormented Betrayer. Anyways. So this is something I won't go over. You can simply pause the video and, you know, look at it yourself. Type in or take whatever notes you want or something. But there's quite a bit of sextants you really don't want to worry about. I put in parentheses if there's any like off ones or exceptions. So for example, massive 10, 12%, 20% quality is pretty bad, but it does give you additional quantity from the quality. So like more map returns. So if you're kind of poor, maybe that's one you could keep early. But anyways, yeah, so those are going to be those. Then there's the good ones. That goes for about an entire page. These are all pretty good. They either, you know, add stuff to the map, add monsters to the map, give you more resources on that map, give you more currency from that map, stuff like that. So you can pause and check those out. And finally, the really, really good ones that you'll typically want to pair with like prophecies and stuff. You have the 30% increased quantity of items found in unidentified maps. This is pretty good quantity, and whenever you're valuing your maps and one of them goes unidentified, when you get that sextant, you want to run those. So always keep a few unidentified map that you're running from, you know, valuing them. Areas are alluring. Apparently, it's like as rare as a mirror drop, but it doesn't do anything. It's kind of like a troll, which is everything. It's like an Easter egg about fishing or something. Anyways. Strongboxes in area are corrupted. This is really, really good paired with something like Monster's Treasure, because you're adding like 30 strongboxes to your map, and everything in there is corrupted without even you needing to roll them, which is really, really good. Because, you know, tons and tons of 6-links. And early 6-links can be worth a lot, because any 6-link that has anything remotely useful is basically going to be worth more than a tabula, and by more I mean a lot more, obviously depending on the colors on that given base. But yeah, that's another thing. Players cannot take reflected damage. This is kind of nice whenever you corrupt maps and they go reflect. When you get that sextant, run those. Strongbox monsters have 500% increased quantity. This is another one that goes super well with Monster's Treasure, because all the monsters in the map are going to be in the strongboxes, essentially. So strongbox monsters, essentially with Monster's Treasure, becomes every monster in the map have 500% quantity, which is like crazy for returns and for currency in general. Hunted Traders is amazing, and Alva and Nico in general are obviously good. And Beyond for XP for the most part. Tormented Betrayer, I think they nerfed this one pretty badly. But still, kind of nice because it's basically free Scarabs. When Scarabs are cheap, maybe it's not like as insane as it can be, but when Scarabs, for example, Sulfite Scarabs, around the end of a league being like 50C or even an Exalt each, in Standard, for example, being able to just stack a bunch of them is pretty nuts. So, prophecies to use when mapping. A master seeks help of your choice, whatever you're trying to farm. Tempests, they'll add some quantity to your map. There's a bunch of those. I believe there's 4. Fire, ice, whatever. Plague of rats and frogs for more monsters. And there are actually quite a bit more monsters from these prophecies. Deadly Twins gives you 2 times more map bosses. So, twinned map bosses. I think this is one you should use, especially when it comes to triple map bosses, because then you end up with a ton of map bosses or high tier maps. The reason why high tier maps is because map bosses have a higher chance of dropping map returns. So if you're using this in like a T16 map, you're higher in your chance of getting, you know, a map return extra from that map, and they're typically like dirt cheap, these prophecies. And in the Torment and Forceful Exorcism, this is one that, you know, basically it's like a never-ending cycle of more ghosts tormenting more monsters, and this is how people were getting literally infinite freaking Scarabs with the Tormented Betrayer sextant. But I think they nerfed this pretty heavily, but it can still be pretty good. Oops. Bountiful Traps, Monster's Treasure, and with alongside the 500% quantity I already said, that can be insane currency. Vow wins if you're patient. can net you a ton of 6 links as well, especially if you're juicing up your maps. And the Queen's Vault finally. Basically, Queen's Vault, whenever you kill normal Aziri, or yeah, I think it's just normal Aziri, might be Uber as well, it doesn't really matter. She's going to drop her map, Vaults of Aziri. And in a league where Vaults of Aziri is a high tier map, if you drop it, you can just run it, and it actually follows the Atlas map rules, the Atlas rules. So let's say it's a T12 map. Even if you have no other T12, you'll have a chance of dropping the adjacent maps to it, which can be really, really good if you're farming a lot of Aziri, because by simply running the Vaults of Aziri maps, you can get a bunch of high tier maps, which is Pog. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not on D&D. God damn it. D&D. So yeah. Sorry about that. And finally, remember to level gems. If you have access to it, get yourself a quality to socketed gems staff or bow, or whatever, 6 link or 6 socket, or 2-3 sockets, but I don't know if you can roll 6% on 3 socket ones. But a bow and a staff is definitely going to roll 6% quality, and on an Empower, on an Enlighten, that amounts to like 30% more XP, because 1% quality is like 5% more XP gained. So that's huge when it comes to, leveling up the Empowers and Enlightens. Even if it costs you like a handful of Chaos, it's definitely worth investing into it if you're going to level a lot of Empowers and Enlightens. Stacking Mastery Missions is going to be super, super Pog this league. It's something we've never had access to before. So definitely something to look out for, the ways that are going to be available to really max out how much currency you can make from this. And finally, use a very, very strict loot filter. So don't pick up trash, only good bases, only jewelry, only currency, only maps, only the good stuff. I'd recommend at the moment you get to maps, honestly, just use like very strict, or at least strict from Neversink if you don't have your own filter. And then when you get to like red maps, or after a few days when you start having a little bit of base currency and you can no longer sell like really trash items just because everybody's kind of done leveling, so nobody's buying like rares with just a tiny bit of res or a tiny bit of life, then go up to like very strict or even uber strict, because it's all about, killing more monsters, and in the end, killing more monsters will net you more currency than picking up a bunch of trash rares that you're just going to vendor for alch shards anyways. Might as well just drop an alchemy than, 5 rare items that will turn into an alchemy when you're done vendoring all of them, and you've wasted 2 minutes, actually looking at the items, identifying them, etc., etc. So, final little note, I want to give a huge thank you to my Patreons. Jose, which is Kfish, you're the man. Alex, you're awesome. DanteSHK, you're fucking amazing. ZzMastermind, never thought I'd have somebody who actually has his own div card support me and be a Patreon, so you're fucking awesome. Drool, thank you a ton. Gorogothands as well. And finally, Val. There is one more, but he wishes to remain anonymous, so we will, actually keep it that way. But to all the Patreons, thank you guys a fuck ton. You're making this basically possible. Little bonus at the end of this video. The streaming PC is actually essentially done. I just gotta wait for the pieces to actually be available to buy them, and then you might just see some Path of Math stream very soon. I don't know if it's gonna be ready for Blight, the start of Blight League, but at some point during Blight League, you're gonna see my stream pop up, and I'll start streaming a good bit. So hopefully you're in a little something, and until the next one, which is gonna be the final installation of the top X ways to make currency, which is going to come in the next couple days. That one's going to be about trading, being a hideout warrior, and all that good stuff that I'm sure most of you guys actually care about. I wanted to keep the best for last. So once again, thank you for everybody for watching, liking, subscribing. Thank you to the Patreon people, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.